Analyst at RANE. Ryan, let's start with that summit in Riyadh. Just how significant is the latest show of unity by Arab and Islamic leaders? And will it have any sway in Israel's actions or lead to any tangible outcomes?
Well, many of these summits are essentially symbolic in nature, and this one is no different. However, it underlines the challenges that Israel has with further normalization within the region. Saudi Arabia's position over the past year has been steadily hardening to attaching a Palestinian state to any normalization deal with Israel. And summits like this essentially shift the narrative within Saudi Arabia that they really can't make a deal with Israel that might even involve U.S. goodies like a defense pact or a nuclear civilian program supplied by the Americans. Essentially, without a Palestinian state, Saudi-Israeli normalization isn't just frozen, it seems to be on life support.
All right, and this summit is also quite a significant time for the Middle East, especially when it comes to relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which have been locked in a decades-long rivalry. Is there hope that the two can perhaps resolve their differences, given Saudi Arabia and its allies are now kind of warming to Tehran after Israel's attacks in Gaza and Lebanon, and, perhaps could choose Iran over Israel?
Well, certainly Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Arab states are looking out for themselves. And the way they do that is by having détente with Iran. It's important to remember under the first Trump administration, Iran was able to attack Saudi Arabia, both through its proxies and directly in 2019. And it did not experience a significant military reprisal for those attacks. And that taught Saudi Arabia, as well as the other Gulf Arab states, that if they're going to live in this region with a dangerous rival like Iran, they have to live with it on its terms. And that's where this détente push has come from. The only way that this could be upset could potentially be if there's Israeli or American escalation against Iran itself, and then Iran would be tempted to strike Gulf Arab targets in order to rattle or even shock the energy markets that the United States cares so much about.
Right. I also want to talk about the Arab Lead Secretary there warning that UN members may soon vote to freeze Israel's UN membership. What is the likelihood of this? And if Israel's membership is indeed frozen, what does that entail? If you could give us more details, what must they do to have their membership reinstated? Would Israel even want to do so?
I would expect the United States to use its veto to block such maneuvers. They can be carried out in a symbolic way through the UNGA, where they're non-binding. And there, I would expect it to pass. But in any attempt to remove or freeze Israel's membership in a significant way is certainly going to be blocked under the Trump administration, which is stridently pro-Israel. So in that sense, it will continue to showcase Israel's relative diplomatic isolation. But the key player that matters, the United States, will remain a shield for Israel throughout this presidential administration.
We heard Israeli officials saying that they are preparing for full Israeli sovereignty over settlements in the West Bank. Ryan, what do you make of the timing of this announcement, and how serious should we take this?
Well, certainly the far right in Israel very much wanted Trump to win. They believe that Trump will not punish them, that he will end the sanctions that the Biden administration has put on the settler movement. And they believe that the Trump administration simply isn't focused on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict other than the ways that it affects energy and American security. So they think that this is their moment to push annexation, which they very nearly got in 2020. It's important to remember that Israel was on a trend towards annexing the West Bank and decided to trade that away for normalization with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan. It was worth it to Netanyahu at the time, and that was a major diplomatic achievement of the Trump administration back then. But this time, the Saudis are unlikely to trade normalization for the Israelis holding off on annexation. And so under this second term, Israeli annexation seems to be significantly more likely in the West Bank, and the potential of the Israeli resettlement of the Gaza Strip, particularly in areas that the Israeli military is depopulated, like in northern Gaza, has also increased.
Do you think Trump will support such a move? I mean, he's seen to favor a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict.
I think that the two-state solution that he offered in 2020 was really symbolically, it was in name only. The map that they drew was effectively a one-state solution that favored Israel and then carved up Palestine and what would remain of it into these semi-reservation systems that would have been isolated from one another. the Palestinians rejected that because it was effectively saying that the Palestinian people would live under Israeli security and then economic domination more or less in perpetuity. And so that wasn't a palatable option for them. I don't think that Trump himself has a very sophisticated or even interested in opinion on this issue. He defers to advisors, he defers to lobbyists, and all of them are very stridently pro-Israel, and they very much would like to see Israel secure its control over the West Bank permanently.
Right. And Ryan, Trump's record in office is a mixed one when it comes to the Middle East. If you could just remind us again about some of his successes, some of the controversies that have plagued his prior administration.
Well, certainly the transactionalism provided some of its successes, like the Abraham Accords. That was a major diplomatic achievement for both Israel and the United States. There is a mixed record on the maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Yes, it reduced Iran's GDP and slowed its growth and then collapsed its currency, but it didn't fundamentally change Iran's strategic behavior. And it also gave Iran the ability to advance uranium to the point where they're now very close to a breakout point for a weapon. They can more or less develop a simple nuclear weapon at any time in a few weeks if they so chose. So that was a major setback for them, but it was a mixed record in terms of the impact they were looking for on Iran. In other areas, the Trump administration did have some success shoring up relations with Gulf Arab allies, or Gulf Arab partners like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. It also did prevent a Saudi and Emirati potential invasion of Qatar in 2017, although initially there were signs that they may have been encouraging that. And then in Yemen, it's another mixed record where they helped de-escalate some aspects of that civil war between the Houthi movement and the UN-backed Yemeni government. But at the same time, they didn't take steps to really solve that conflict. They more or less accomplished a freezing of it towards the end of their term.
All right, many thanks for that, Ryan. We were just speaking there to Ryan Bohl there. He is Senior Middle East and North Africa Analyst at RANE.